iconic Imola for round 7 of the 2025 F1 World Championship. Piastri showed his class last time out in Miami, but who will take the upper hand this weekend as the championship battle intensifies? I'm Eleanor Oldroyd, and this is 5 Live Formula One. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by 5 Live F1's Jenny Gow and former McLaren mechanic Mark Priestley. Hello to both of you. Off to Imola this weekend. And this is a really special racetrack on the F1 calendar, isn't it? What makes this circuit so historic?
I mean, for many reasons. It's tight, it's twisty, it's in the countryside, it's very quaint, it's very unlike most things in F1 anymore. But I suppose for me, what resonates is the loss of Ayrton Senna in 1994, a horrific weekend in F1's history, not only with Ayrton Senna, but Roland Ratzenberger. It was just a horrible, horrible weekend. And it changed the course of F1 and sporting history, really.
I was going to mention the fact that it is a kind of reflective weekend in lots of ways, isn't it, Mark? For that reason, but also for the fact that Formula One is celebrating 75 years this weekend. And I can remember, I was actually on air that Sunday afternoon when Ayrton Senna was killed at Imola. And, my memories of F1 go all the way back to James Hunt and Niki Lauda, and because I am that old. But what about you? What are your memories going back? What's your first memory of F1?
Well, of F1, I actually grew up living very close to the Brands Hatch circuit down in the south of England. And back when I was a kid, they used to hold the British Grand Prix there. So they'd rotate alternate years with Silverstone. So I guess that was my introduction. Formula One came to my sleepy little village rather than me having to go searching for it, which was perhaps part of the reason I ended up involved. But this weekend, looking at this particular weekend, there is so much history around Imola. It's also highly likely to be the very last time we ever go there. This is the last time, the last year of the current contract. Highly unlikely it's going to get renewed. So we're actually losing a little bit of Formula One's history this weekend as well.
I think it's about time that it did go away again. Yeah. It's not the first time that it's gone. It came back just because of COVID. And it stayed and it outlasted what we thought were their expectations. But actually, you look at it and the feel of it, it's lovely. But there's nowhere for people to go. And F1 has outgrown it. It's as simple as that. And it can't expand because there's a big, great river. So there's nowhere for it to go. So it's unfortunate, but it's time.
Yeah, and when you think about the history of F1, we don't want to lose that, do we? We don't want to forget about the days when, you saw drivers driving in. It's incredible to think the lack of safety in the early days. And I was reading something about Jackie Stewart was such a big driving force in making F1 safer, but you want to kind of maintain that link to the roots, but with this modern sport that we have now.
Exactly right. And I think, we do keep circuits. Silverstone's a great example. Silverstone, one of the most historic circuits, but it is fortunately in a great position where it can be expanded. It's developed and improved itself to sort of grow in line with modern expectations. Like Jenny said, Imola doesn't have the capability to do that. And actually, on top of all of that, it's never really produced great racing either, actually, as a circuit. So the sport has to move on, and unfortunately I think Imola is one of the costs of doing that.
Well, let's focus on this weekend. We've already mentioned the history of Imola. We've got a potentially historic battle developing between the two McLaren drivers of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris and Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. So who will this track favour? Mark, what do you think?
I think it's going to favour McLaren, but I think you could probably say that at most weekends this season, given the strength of their current package, their car. I think if you get a little bit more technical, the Red Bull probably likes the faster flowing, long duration, high speed corners, and this circuit doesn't have so many of those. It's much more stop and start. The one thing I would say is the temperature's not going to be extremely high, and that might be a little glimmer of hope to some of the other teams, because what we've seen from the first sample set of races is that McLaren really do excel when the temperature's high, because they've got this really clever trick that there's been a lot of speculation around, is how do they keep their rear tyre temperatures in the working range and under control. So when the temperature's high and everyone else is struggling, they've been very good at doing that. So there'll be a glimmer of hope for everyone else that maybe the ambient temperature is not so high, giving everyone else a chance to keep up.
But they have been so good, haven't they, the McLarens? And Jenny, after the Miami Grand Prix, you asked Oscar Piastri, you interviewed him, and you said it was a clinical performance. And I wanted to ask you what's so clinical about the way he goes about his business?
I think for the fact that he's only been in F1 for 2 and a bit years, and the fact that last year he didn't shine on too many occasions. Yes, there was a Monza overtake going into the first and second corners, and he was clinical then. But it's like he's fast-paced his gap in between the seasons to put in 5 seasons in one. And his comeback is a really polished, really experienced racer with amazing racecraft. And he is able to take Max Verstappen on in his own game, and he can challenge. And Max doesn't know how to race him. He hasn't raced him for years like he has with Lando or Lewis. So he's a fresh approach into F1 and into these other drivers' experiences and knowledge base. So it's a really refreshing sign that he can just come in and be so mature.
And I heard Damon Hill during the coverage last weekend, or a couple of weekends ago, saying, Mark, that he was kind of like one of those kids at school who would have all his pens lined up and all his exercise books lined up in a very meticulous way. Yeah. Is that how you would describe him as well?
Yeah, I think I can totally see what Damon means. I actually think Jenny summed it up just perfectly there. That's exactly what he's like. He's gone under the radar over the last couple of seasons, not made a big fuss about his introduction to the sport. And you can actually think about it. He came to McLaren in controversial circumstances, to the way that his contract at Alpine, there was a little bit of discrepancy over that. So there could have been a lot of storylines around him. Then at times there was the sort of Oscar versus Lando last year, the team orders thing. But even with all of those things going on, he just stayed under the radar, got on with his job. And I think, like you said, Jenny, he's been learning all the way through. And now we're seeing all of that learning come to fruition. He also, the other thing I would add is he stays so calm under pressure. I think if you hooked him up to a heart rate monitor, he'd just flatline the whole way through the season. It's unbelievable at such a young age.
I agree. And after the Miami win, he did this thing called the griddy, which is a little shuffling dance, and he was dared to do it. He met Justin Jefferson on Thursday, who's a famous, remind me, American football player, I want to say. No one's helping me out here.
I know,
no
sorry,
idea.
you're going to get blank looks all around.
X will go crazy, Insta will go crazy. You tell me who he is. But I think, and there was a bet between the two of them, and he said, like, if I win, I'll do the griddy, which is his signature dance.
I think he's a quarterback for an American football team.
See, told you, I knew it all along.
Yeah.
And he did win, and then he had to do this so out of character dance. He is no Daniel Ricciardo. He's not up on the podium drinking shoeies and the extrovert. Oscar is very much an introvert. In fact, his mum is more the extrovert and goes on social media and is the life and soul of that family, it seems. So it's very out of character, but he does have personality, and he does have the ability to go out there and win. And Lando probably thought that this was his championship year. And now, all of a sudden, it might not be.
Well, let's hear from the championship leader, Oscar Piastri, 16 points ahead of the field. And he was asked how much he's enjoying this season at the moment.
I mean, it's pretty hard to say that I'm not when you've won 4 out of 6. So it's been a great start to the year, obviously. I think, I've been enjoying, obviously, the success we've been having on track. But I think for me, what's been very satisfying is all the work we've done behind the scenes to achieve that. Because, it's quite a different feeling when you win a race because you feel like you've just gotten by, or, you had good circumstances, but to now be winning because we have an incredibly quick car and I feel like I'm driving well, that's very satisfying for me. So that's what I've been enjoying the most. Of course, been enjoying standing on the podium as well, but I think, more so the hard work behind the success.
Well, that was Oscar Piastri speaking today. Well, before we discuss the championship battle further, Piastri was also asked about the FIA reducing the penalties given to drivers for swearing or criticising officials. Now, previously, F1 drivers could be fined €40,000 for a first offence, double that plus a ban for a second offence. Now the initial level of fine has been reduced to €5,000 and the potential for a ban lifted, although more severe penalties may still be imposed for very serious offences. been quite a few comments about this. I mean, Oscar Piastri said the changes were good. George Russell says that the back and forth controversy is all a bit suspect. What is going on here,
I find
Mark?
it so strange that we're even talking about this. It's a fairly hefty swear box still, isn't it? At £5,000 a pop. I think the other distinction they've made, the one thing I would say that is sensible, I think it's sensible anyway that they have made this less of a severe thing.
U-turn, I think it's called.
Yeah. But the other really sensible part is they have made a distinction between, I think, what they termed as a controlled environment, like a press conference, as opposed to the sort of adrenaline-fueled environment of being in a car. And I think that's sensible because, when you're in the heat of battle, we've got a bleeper for the broadcast anyway, so you should never hear the actual words that are spoken. But in a press conference, I guess you can argue, and it is a reasonable argument, there are young kids watching, these guys are role models, and actually, in most cases, in a press conference, there shouldn't be a reason to swear. So it all feels fairly sensible. It's a shame it's taken this long to get to this point.
And I think that Russell also went on to say that they haven't had any correspondence with anyone from a senior level at the FIA. And you think at this point in time, the drivers, there are only 20 of them, and they're kind of key to the whole equation. And it does centre around them, and it seems strange that there hasn't been a clear dialogue between either the GPDA, which is their union, or the wider drivers. I have to just say that this is potentially a presidential election year, not Trump, but certainly for the president of the FIA. And let's just see if this is part of that wider thing, the whole thing. I don't want to say propaganda because that doesn't seem quite right, but in this context.
Kind of feels a bit storm in a teacup in a way, but very political.
But why U-turn? Why do it and then go back on it? And we've seen a couple of things similar like this. So yes, I don't know the actual reason, and we haven't obviously been given a chance to speak to Mohammed bin Sulayem, the F1 FIA president. But when we do, we'll let you know.
Well, I think everything's political in F1, even when it isn't political.
That's true.
So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the racing, shall we? Let's go back to the title fight. And it's been mentioned lots this season. We've mentioned it already on the show. But McLaren having two number one drivers, I guess, was always going to cause problems.
Yeah, it was. I think we've been talking about this for a long time, and I think we'll continue to talk about it all the way through this season because, look, McLaren, we've talked about it already, they've got a dominant car. I expect that to continue because although there'll be a raft of upgrades coming probably for Spain in the majority, I don't think we're going to get the same development race that we normally get throughout a season because there's such a massive change coming for 2026 and there's so much focus on that. So there's a high chance that McLaren will continue to dominate, that the distances and the differences will vary. But that means the championship could come down to one of those two drivers. And it's very difficult. I would go as far as to say it's impossible to have two drivers who are, in inverted commas, teammates who are both just going for the World Championship with no outside rivals. If that situation unfolds, I can't believe you can have two number one drivers because the reality is they both take points off each other. You're going to compromise the overall team results perhaps in an attempt to try and keep them both happy, and you can never really rule out someone like Max Verstappen who won't ever be very far behind.
I suppose that the difference is if you have such a clear margin to everyone else, like Mercedes did when it was Bottas or when it was Rosberg going up against Hamilton, there is room for them to just duke it out, and it gets to the last race of the season and it all goes crazy and Rosberg wins the world title in 2016 and then quits because of the nature that they have that margin.
But it's at the moment that they have a margin, but it's not that big. I mean, just look at the championship. Max has won a race already. Yes, he's got a reasonable chunk of points behind, but there's a long way to go still. And the problem is, and I can say this from my own experience, because the last time this happened at McLaren was when I was there in 2007. It was Lewis and Fernando Alonso. And in that particular year, when we had a dominant car, the two best drivers on the grid, we came away empty-handed and won nothing because the infighting and the squabbling between the two actually meant that we took our eye off the ball, and it was Ferrari in the hands of Kimi Raikkonen that year that came through on the final day and took the championship. So it can happen that way.
Well, did Miami kind of sum it up a little bit that, you had Oscar Piastri getting out there, getting past Verstappen. When it came to Lando Norris trying to take him on, race him, overtake him, he was just outsmarted by Max Verstappen. Has he got to be a bit smarter, in his wheel-to-wheel racing?
I think smarter, more aggressive. I think, as Jenny said earlier on, Max has got a slight unknown with Oscar. So when they go wheel to wheel, it's not very clear from Max's point of view what Oscar's going to do. He's got a very good handle on what Lando can do. But what's really important between the two McLaren drivers right now is these early races, they matter, because with Oscar now in the championship lead, at some stage, if they do have to make decisions that will favour one or the other when it comes to strategy or development, they're going to choose the driver who's in the front, who's in the front first position.
And at some point in time, they will have to make a decision. They will. They'll have to. Andrea Stella will sit there and go, okay, with Zach Brown, the management team, and if one is walking away with it,
then put our eggs in the Piastri basket.
They have to, and that's going to hurt the dynamic of the team going forward.
Yeah. You mentioned the fact that the McLaren cars are absolutely streets ahead of everyone else, Mark. And you look at what Max is doing in the Red Bull, Jenny. I mean, he is really he's overperforming in that car, isn't he?
Yes, he's managing to drive that car to a limit that I don't think anyone else would be able to do at the minute. He is a very instinctual racer, but he also goes away and learns all the time. He drove the Nordschleife-Ring last weekend. He's just had a new baby. I mean, how he has the mental capacity for everything that's going on in his life, I have no idea. But he does. And he comes to a race weekend and he's almost perfect before he even gets out on track. So yes, he's outperforming that Red Bull and getting results when I don't think anyone else could.
Yeah.
And does that actually make us appreciate him even more as a driver, do you think, Mark? When he was so dominant in the Red Bull, it's very easy to say, yeah, but the car's brilliant. And now he's in a slightly less good car.
Yeah.
Are we now seeing the true great racer that he is?
I think so, yeah, because it shows another side of him where you do have to fight. He's had years when he's been utterly dominant, 23, where he literally walked away with it and really couldn't do anything wrong. There have been other years where he's really had to fight, and 2021 was a really great example of that. This year he's having to fight from a position where he's not only not got the quickest car, but it's some way off being the quickest car. And as Jenny said, he's outperforming what that car should really be capable of doing. In some ways, from a Red Bull perspective, you could say that might mask some of the severity of the Red Bull issues, because he's still able to pull some results out the bag. But on the other hand, he's doing exactly what they need to keep them at least somewhere in touch with the championship fight. And if they can find something on the car that brings them a little bit closer, well, then he's done all the work early on to keep them in the fight.
Let's talk about Ferrari, Jenny, because they were hoping they were going to be in the championship fight this season with Lewis Hamilton in red, but they've had a poor start. Lewis has expressed his frustrations over the team radio in Miami, and now we're in Italy.
Yes.
So the pressure is on, isn't it?
No one's looking, it's fine. The Tifosi, having experienced what it's like to be there and to watch races in front of the Italian fans, it's something else. The Italian media, everyone builds up this pressure pot, this environment of expectation. And Lewis himself is doing the same thing. I want to win. I want to be out there. I had a taste of victory in China and I want more. And you can just see the frustration is creeping in. And hopefully they've got some upgrades this weekend. There'll be a whole new raft of upgrades when it gets to Barcelona and the Spanish Grand Prix. Hopefully that will act as some sort of reset, but I don't think it's going to be a miracle. I mean, do you remember testing? When Lewis went out testing for Ferrari at Fiorano, the start of the season, someone chopped down a tree because it was in the way. I mean, the fever for Ferrari was unbelievable. Yeah, just so they could get a better vantage point. So there's so much expectation.
And so much disappointment so far. But this is what Lewis Hamilton had to say when he was asked about turning the poor form around and his strong mentality.
I think ultimately it comes down to the self-belief you have in yourself. And I think that's... and it's just the mentality. Like, I truly believe that, far from perfect. I truly believe that each day I can do better, I can try harder. If I fail, I try again. I think when it gets low, I have tools in which I utilize. I don't really listen to all the stuff there's so many rumors, there's so many people making assumptions, comments, judgments. 99% of them don't actually know really what's going on. 99% of them, or probably 100% of them, don't know what I've been through to get where I am today. And I think the other things I often find myself having to just remind myself, I have won 7 world titles. I have won more than any other driver in history. I have to remind myself that I also have done great things. And whilst things are not always going to be great, and we're having this period of time, things will get better. If you believe and if you continue to push, you continue to work, and there's no lack of enthusiasm or talent in this team. So I generally truly believe we're going to get there at some stage. You have to be patient.
Well, that was Lewis Hamilton. Just a word about Charles Leclerc. He actually didn't appear for Media Day today at the track because he was feeling unwell, but he is expected to be in the car for the race weekend. Listening to Lewis Hamilton there, I mean, Mark, that's a very low-key, reflective. I mean, what do you make? I mean, you know Lewis better than any of us here.
Well, I believe everything he says. I think it was quite a convincing little soundbite, that. And I think knowing what I know about Lewis is that he's quite a reflective character. So he's quite emotional when he's in the car and when he first gets out of the car. And we often hear him either really up or really down at the end of races. And I think a lot of people judge him on that. But the reality of Lewis is he'll go away and he's very, very good at resetting his own mindset and coming back stronger. And make no mistake, everything he said there is true. He will be working harder than anybody. He'll be more committed than anybody. And if there is any hope or any chance that Ferrari can turn this round, he will be right at the very centre of it.
And has he got that? I mean, he's obviously got the respect of 7 world titles. I mean, you know, he mentioned it there, Jenny. But the relationship, the working relationship between him and the rest of the team, you know, this new team, can they between them get to a place where they can compete?
I believe they can, because as you say, Mark, Lewis is going to put in the hard graft. He won't just walk away at the end of Sunday and not go back to the team until the next race. So between he and Charles Leclerc, they are both focused on the same thing, which is getting that car to be as good as it can be. The whole team is focused on getting that car to be as good as it can be. So we do see a turnaround at some point. It's just how long will it take? And will Fred Brasseur, the team principal, be able to last as long as it takes?
We mentioned that we're back in Italy. First home race for Italian rookie Kimi Antonelli for Mercedes. Apparently he was out celebrating Bologna's Coppa Italia victory last night. Not too late, though, he said.
His bedtime's 6 o'clock, isn't it? It's fine. He's 18.
Well, he is still genuinely doing his homework, isn't he? Because he's finishing off his studies in between F1 races, which is bizarre. But, great.
I mean, what would you like to see a great... You gave a little kind of mini cheer when I mentioned Kimi Antonelli,
I
Jenny.
just think the story is amazing. Being in Miami, watching him put the car on sprint qualifying pole was impressive. Bearing in mind, at that point, he had done 5 races. So 5 race weekends. We've seen flashes of genius. Unfortunately for him, his last experience of being in a car in F1 in Italy was crashing into one of the high-speed corners at Monza. It didn't end well. It was just FP1. But he'll have the weight of the whole country on his shoulders. And he can. And that Mercedes, I honestly believe it's a race-winning car if the McLarens aren't there. It's a big caveat, I know.
Yeah. But I do think they have a chance, and I think I actually personally think he doesn't seem like a kid that suffers or struggles with the pressure. It might even elevate him. You know, we talk about Ferrari having their own struggles. Well, there's a whole host of Italian tifosi there with someone. They want to get behind someone. It could be that they get behind Kimi this weekend, and what a great story that would be. And he does have a really good shot, I think. Mercedes might have a car this weekend that certainly will be in the mix, because it more or less has been there or thereabouts. And I think this circuit could well work for them. So this could be a good opportunity for him.
It feels like it's been a long time since an Italian stood up on the top step in Italy.
Yeah. You're not going to ask me who it was or
yes,
when.
Come on. That's what I was angling towards.
Probably Fisichella at some point.
Yeah. Let's go with that.
Okay.
I don't know the answer.
And no pressure on Kimi at all at the age of 18 in his home track to get on the podium. One final thing to mention is that this weekend will be Franco Colapinto's first race for Alpine. That's after the demotion of Jack Doohan. I mean, you know, what can we expect from Colapinto?
The world. That's what Alpine will be expecting. He came in, had a very strong start when he was drafted in for Williams midway through last season. And he scored points, and he did some amazing things in that car. And then, unfortunately, he had some crashes. So it will just take the course of the weekend, I suppose, really, to evaluate where he starts from and where he's going to build. He's got 5 races to do it. That's what the team have said. Doing out for 5. And then who knows where they go next.
Well, also, I think that the difference, I guess, between his outing last year in Williams, which did start off really impressively, was that there wasn't so much, it wasn't like a dangling carrot at the end of that, because it wasn't like he was being offered the drive. He knew that drive had gone. So it was literally a filling in. He was the supply teacher, wasn't he, for a few races. This time, there really is the genuine opportunity, if he does well in these 5 races, there's a career at the end of it with this team. So there's a different set of pressures around it. He needs to put a full, solid weekend together. That's what Jack Doohan wasn't able to do. He had some great qualifying moments, but never managed to complete a full weekend to a high standard. If he can do that, his future looks bright.
I think the last time I was let loose with you guys on 5 Live Formula One, we were talking about Liam Lawson being demoted, weren't we? And there's quite an interesting Q&A on Andrew Benson's Q&A on the BBC Sport website, where somebody asked the question if there was a problem with rookies this season, if this is a thing that the patience is diminishing as well. I mean, or do you think this is just a complete coincidence?
No, I think that's a complete coincidence. I honestly believe when you look at the success maybe that some of the drivers are having, like Kimi Antonelli, who's come in as a rookie. There are like Isaac Hadjar for Racing Bulls. They're impressive. So yes, I think there's an expectation you have to come in and perform, but there's also they are coming in performing as a rookie. There is pressure, absolutely, and there's an element of impatience, which I do agree with, in that particularly next year we've got such a massive set of changes coming to the cars, the racing. You don't really want to be bringing a rookie in next year, so they really, that's part of the reason there were so many rookies in this year. They want to get it all sorted, ready for next year. Franco Colapinto even said, I think himself, 5 races is not a very long time. Lewis Hamilton's even saying, judge me after a couple of years at Ferrari, not after 7 races. So you do need a bit of time to bed into a team and into a car and into a sport that's this fast moving and high pressure. So I have some sympathy with them. Oh, I have every sympathy with him and with the rookies, but this is the sport. This is a top caliber, top level sport, and every sport has the same weighting. Football, rugby, all the same. If you don't perform, you're out.
Jenny, Mark, you always perform.
Oh, thank goodness. We're out.
Thank you very much indeed. And there'll be a full commentary of every session across the 5 Live network this weekend. Full details can be found on the BBC Sport website. The race is on Sunday afternoon. It gets underway at 2 p.m. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.